Humans argue louder over pizza toppings than most species wage wars. The Galactic Peace Council never expected this when they invited Earth's delegate, a young woman named Clara Bennett, to mediate negotiations between two rival fleets. They assumed she would sit politely, perhaps share cultural trivia, then step aside while the dignitaries debated. Instead, Clara strode into the glittering amphitheater with a bright smile, a stack of paper, and a squeaky pen that scratched bold bubble letters across the council's ancient stone table. "Step 1, she announced cheerfully. "We're going to list what each of you actually wants, instead of yelling across the chamber." The dignitaries blinked. Vaide-eyed Tranthari Admiral sputtered that such methods were beneath the dignity of interstellar diplomacy. "Carity," General hissed in 4 tones that humans clearly did not grasp the honor of war. Clara tapped her pen on the pad. "Do you want to keep fighting until your great grandchildren are still drawing battle maps? Or do you want trade rights, free shipping lanes, and fewer holes in your ships?" "Silence," an aide coughed. Counselor shifted. Clara calmly drew 2 columns labeling them "Things we want" and "Things we can give." She slid the page toward the Tranthari. "Fill this in." The Admiral, spines bristling, muttered about primitive tools. Clara arched a brow and said, "Fine, but if you don't, I'll assume you want unlimited coupons. 4 free haircuts." The chamber erupted in puzzled laughter, even from species without hair. Within minutes, both sides were scribbling furious notes. Clara kept interrupting with blunt questions others had avoided. "Why do you even want that moon? You don't breathe oxygen and just a rock." The Karate admitted they didn't need it, it was simply pride. "Okay," Clara replied, circling pride in thick marker. "So what could they give you instead that makes you feel honored?" By the end of the first session, a draft agreement sat on the table. The council stared in disbelief. This should have taken months of shouting, threats, and vibe. Clara had done it in 1 afternoon with a pen and questions that made everyone squirm in the most direct way. Word spread faster than plasma fire. Armies across the galaxy whispered about the human who turned centuries of hatred into a scribbled list and a handshake. The joke in starports was that Earthlings didn't bring guns to wars, they brought office supplies. Clara, who thought she'd signed up for a brief internship, suddenly found herself drowning in invitations. Generals wanted her advice before campaigns. Admirals wanted her in their command centers. Mercenary Guild even offered lifetime free pizza, assuming that was an irresistible bribe. Clara wasn't sure whether to laugh or panic. On Earth, she had studied sociology, not galactic law. She had mediated fights over dish duty, not planetary sieges. But the aliens didn't care. They had watched her cut through pompous speeches with a shrug and a doodle. They had seen her twist insults into jokes that left both sides chuckling instead of snarling. The galaxy had never met a human who asked, "Yes, but why are you really upset?" and wouldn't let the question drop. Soon Clara was in a warship strategy room, surrounded by officers of 5 species, each armed with weapons and tradition. They expected her to outline tactical strike. Clara leaned over the holomap and asked, "Does anyone even like this plan?" Silence. Officers shifted. She tapped the map. "We're risking 1,000 lives because none of you want to admit you dislike the guy who pitched it. You don't need my blessing, you need me to say it aloud. So it's a bad plan." Next, a ripple of relief spread. Officers nodded. Sighed openly. Within half an hour they were drafting a safer, sharper strategy. Word spread again. Armies that once mocked humans as fragile now begged for Clara or her kind, not for strength or speed but for that strange earthborn talent of making people admit the truth, laugh at themselves and try something. Martyr. Clara suspected she had changed her planet's reputation forever. Also feared that if she couldn't train others she'd never sleep again. For now she kept arriving with her paper, her squeaky pen and deceptively simple questions. Each time she entered a war room, aliens straightened nervously, half expecting her to unravel centuries of grudges with one raised brow and a doodle in the margins. And she wasn't done yet. Clara realized she was a galactic celebrity the day a delegation of armored soldiers from 3 empires appeared outside her apartment carrying a banner in 8 languages. "Please fix our generals." She peeked out the window, heard the chants and muttered, "I really should have stayed in grad school." But the universe had other plans. The council gave her an official title, Conflict Resolution Advisor. Though Clara joked, it should be person who states the obvious until everyone nods. Invitations kept piling up. Voric Dominion wanted her at war games. The Jothara Empire asked her to draft treaties. Pirate Coalition even asked her to mediate a quarrel over a stolen battleship. Clara accepted mostly out curiosity. She boarded their ship, noting the patched hull and mismatched uniforms. The captains were already shouting. Clara calmly unpacked her bag, placed 3 clipboards on the table, and said, "Okay, write down why you think this ship is yours." Extra points. 4 complete sentences. The pirates were so stunned they obeyed. By the end they agreed to share the vessel and even scheduled alternating karaoke nights. Clara herself sang a terrible version of Sweet Caroline, which pirates of 4 species immediately adopted as their new anthem. Rumors flew faster than ever. Soldiers wore t-shirts saying, "Don't start a war, ask a human." Traders sold pens branded official Clara tools of peace, which sold out across 3-star systems. Clara had no idea how to stop. Worse, demand for her time was overwhelming. Armies wanted her in 2 places at once. Councils begged her to revise their charters. Even mercenaries asked her to teach the human method. At first, Clara tried to keep up through sheer scheduling, scribbling notes in margins and dashing between starships. But then a new crisis shoved her into the center of the galaxy's focus. Tranthari and Karati, the very factions she first united, had clashed again. Time it wasn't over a barren moon but a vital trade corridor. The council panicked. Without Clara, the fragile peace might collapse. When she arrived, humans bicker louder about pizza toppings than most civilizations fight wars. Galactic Peace Council hadn't expected this when they invited Earth's envoy, young woman named Clara Bennett, to mediate between 2 hostile fleets. They had pictured her sitting quietly, maybe sharing a few cultural stories, then stepping aside while the dignitaries argued. Instead, Clara marched into the glittering amphitheater with a sunny smile, a stack of paper and a squeaky pen that she used to scrawl oversized bubble letters across the council's ancient stone table. "Step 1, she chirped. "We're going to write down what each of you actually want instead of shouting at each other." The dignitaries stared. The 8-eyed Tranthari admiral spluttered that such antics insulted the seriousness of interstellar diplomacy. The Karathai general hissed in 4 harmonies that humans clearly failed to grasp the honor of battle. Clara tapped her pen against her pad. "Do you want to keep fighting until you're great? Grandchildren are still sketching battle plans. Or do you want trade routes open? Lanes and fewer holes in your ships? Silence. One aide coughed uneasily. Counselor shifted. Clara drew two neat columns labeling them. Things we want, and things we can give. She pushed the sheet toward the Admiral. Fill it in. He bristled with spines and muttered about primitive tools. Clara lifted an eyebrow and said, "All right, but if you don't, I'll just assume you want lifetime coupons. 4 free haircuts." The chamber cracked into baffled laughter, even from species without hair. Within minutes, both sides were scribbling furiously. Clara kept breaking in with blunt questions no one else dared ask. Why even fight for that moon? You don't breathe oxygen and it's just a rock. The Karathai admitted they didn't need it, it was purely pride. Clara said, circling pride in thick ink. So what can they offer that makes you feel honored instead? By the close of that session, a treaty draft sat on the table. The counselor gaped in disbelief. This was supposed to take months of yelling threats and bribes. Clara had managed it in one afternoon with a pen and questions that cut straight through. News spread quicker than a plasma flare. Armies across the stars whispered about the human who turned centuries of hatred into a doodled list and a handshake. The joke at starports was that Earthlings didn't bring weapons to wars. They brought stationery. Clara, who thought she'd signed up for a brief internship, suddenly drowned in invitations. Generals wanted her input before campaigns. Admirals requested her in their war rooms. One mercenary guild even promised her free pizza for life, believing no human could resist. Clara didn't know whether to laugh or panic. On Earth she had studied sociology, not galactic law. She'd refereed squabbles over dishes, not planetary sieges. Aliens didn't care. They had watched her slice through pompous speeches with a shrug and a doodle. They'd seen her spin insults into jokes that made both camps snicker instead of seethe. The galaxy had never met an advisor who asked, "But why are you really angry?" and wouldn't let it drop. Soon Clara stood in a warship strategy hall, surrounded by officers from 5 species, all bristling with weapons and tradition. They expected a tactical plan. Clara leaned over the holographic. "Does anyone here even like this idea?" she asked. Silence. They looked at one another. She tapped the map. "You're risking thousands of lives. Because no one wants to admit you hate the guy who proposed it. You don't need my blessing. You need me to say it out loud. So it's a bad plan." Next, relief rolled through the chamber. Heads nodded. Some even sighed. Within 30 minutes, they had a safer, smarter strategy. Word of this spread. Armies that once mocked humans as frail now begged for Clara or someone like her. They didn't want strength or speed. They wanted the strange earthborn skill of forcing people to admit the truth, laugh at themselves, then do better. Clara suspected she had accidentally changed her planet's reputation. She also worried that unless she trained others, she'd never sleep again. For now, she kept showing up with her paper stack, squeaky pen, and the same deceptively simple questions. Time she entered a war room, aliens sat up straighter, wary that she might dismantle centuries of grudges with one raised eyebrow and a doodle. And she was far from done. Clara realized she'd become a galactic celebrity the day a squad of armored soldiers from 3 empires appeared outside her temporary apartment with a banner in 8 languages. "Please fix our generals." She peeked through the window, saw the chanting crowd, and murmured, "I really should have stayed in grad school." But fate had other plans. The council granted her an official title, Conflict Resolution Advisor. Clara joked. It should say, person who states the obvious loudly until everyone agrees. Invitations multiplied. Voric Dominion wanted her at war games. The Jothara Empire asked her to draft treaties. Pirate Coalition even asked her to settle a feud over a stolen battleship. Clara accepted that one out. Curiosity. She boarded their vessel, eyeing the patchwork hull and mismatched uniforms. The captains were already yelling across the deck. Clara unpacked her bag, placed 3 clipboards on the table and said, "Okay, write why you think this ship is yours. Bonus points. 4 full sentences." Pirates too done to argue obeyed. By the end, they agreed to share the vessel and rotate karaoke nights. Clara even sang a dreadful version of Sweet Caroline, which 4 species of pirates instantly adopted as their anthem. Rumors spread faster than ever. Soldiers wore novelty shirts reading, "Don't start a war, ask a human." A trade company sold pens branded official Clara tools of peace, and they sold out in 3 systems. Clara had no clue how to stop any of it. Worse, the demand for her grew crushing. Armies wanted her everywhere at once. Councils begged for her edits. Even mercenaries asked her to teach the human method. At first, Clara survived by brute calendar juggling, scribbling notes in margins and racing between starships. But then came a crisis that dragged her back to the galactic spotlight. The Tranthari and the Karati, the first 2 factions she had ever reconciled, were feuding again. This time it wasn't a worthless moon but a crucial trade corridor. The council panicked. Without Clara, the fragile peace might shatter. When she arrived,